Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. After we run you through the news you need to know about, we run you through the fan Q&A where we answer fans' questions. Not a ton of news to talk about. I think we only got, 30 days for the season to start. We're getting super excited, but this first news story comes from Pro Football Rumors, and it's concerning another receiver that the Dolphins have lost to the opt-out. And I don't think we talked about this on last week's episode. If we did, I apologize. But Dolphins wide receiver Albert Wilson has opted out. The Dolphins are down another receiver. One day after Allen Hurns opted out of the 2020 season, teammate Albert Wilson has made the same call. He said, quote, "It was a very tough choice. I will stand with my teammates and brothers to support them 100% throughout the season and will be counting the days until I can join them again." So this is it's very similar to the Allen Hurns situation, but a little worse because Albert Wilson, if you followed the team last year, especially towards the end of the year, he started to come back, especially in that Cincinnati Bengals game. Like, he had a couple plays there. It was like, okay, he's finally close to what we saw before he had the injury against Detroit with the hip. He was getting to that point where he was the guy that took over the Bears game. He was that guy again, and he was one of the big reasons we went 3-0 to start that year. Again, won that Chicago game. One of the most dominant performances by a Dolphin in the last 5 years was that performance against Chicago. I mean, single-handedly won us that game against a good defense, too. And we never really got to see that Albert Wilson again. And the speed, the run after the catch ability with him is outstanding when he's healthy. And so this one hurts a little bit more because he was coming off the injury last year. He was never really healthy throughout the season, and then we finally got to see it at the end of especially the last month of the year. We finally got to see glimpses of the old Albert Wilson. And to not see that here, you have a young quarterback, Gailey, new offensive coordinator. Everything is looking and going in a positive direction, and it would just would have been fun to see him be a part of that and see him, if Tua plays, Tua has another weapon. You can do a lot of different things with him, especially in this Gailey offense where it is a lot of spread, it is a lot of screens, which I think he does very well. He really does a great job of getting receivers involved in the middle of the field. It really reminds me a lot of some of the stuff that the Saints do, and how successful they are with some of the middle field stuff. And it would have been fun to see him implemented in that screen game, middle of the field, run after the catch type stuff that I think he would have thrived in. Getting him matched up with a linebacker or maybe a safety over the middle and really just taking advantage of some of his strengths. And the fact that we don't get to see that is very, very, very... it sucks, it's rough, but the good thing is that this team does have great depth on it. We discussed this on last week's episode. Gary Jennings, who by all accounts has been very good in the offseason. I know from things that we've heard, the team and the organization feels really good about him. Isaiah Ford, who played better than Allen Hurns did down the stretch of last year. He played really well. He really fit that offense to a T. I think that offense was perfectly tailored to him. From what we heard from Chad O'Shea, just to take you guys back a little bit, of last year with Isaiah Ford, is very smart, cerebral, was really good at the option routes, was really good at dissecting coverages and giving the quarterback really what he was thinking on some of those option routes, and it really, he was really good at, really deciphering defenses and giving, and allowing the quarterback to really trust what the routes he's going to run. He was just really good at understanding the offense, and some of that stuff. So he's a really smart player, and he was a perfect player for the slot position. He's a bigger guy, good run after the catch skills, great hands, and a really good route runner. And you really saw that last year. And especially when, I always bring this up, but when Devontae Parker got hurt when we were on the road at MetLife, and we should have won that game, but the refs and we couldn't finish in the red zone, but the refs and the red zone issues, Ryan Fitzpatrick didn't have the best day in the red zone. He missed a couple throws. But when Devontae left, Albert Wilson was hurt. I think Allen Hurns at that point wasn't playing. All we really had was Mike Gesicki and Isaiah Ford. So you're kind of looking, Preston Williams wasn't there, obviously. He was gone for the year with the ACL injury. So you look around and like, who are we going to throw to? The offensive line, we can't run the football. And Isaiah Ford took over that game. He absolutely took over that game. I think he finished with almost 100 yards receiving. And he was the go-to guy. And since that point on, from that game for the rest of the year, he showed us, like, okay, this guy has a future, especially with this team. And I always feel like we talk about Hearns and Wilson, even Jakeem Grant. And Isaiah Ford, really, if you think about it, other than like maybe special teams play and the one touchdown that Jakeem Grant had on the New England Patriots that one time when Jay Cutler threw him the touchdown, it was on Monday Night Football. Really, Isaiah Ford has shown more promise than Jakeem Grant has as a receiver, in my opinion. Now, if you're talking about it as a weapon, then it's not really that close. But as a receiver, Isaiah Ford has shown great promise, and I'm excited to see what he does in this offense as well. There's, again, a lot of depth at that position, which is good because if this was any other team, like say this is the 2012 Dolphins, if you lose Devon Best or Brian Hartline off that team, it's pretty much over. On this team, for whatever reason, especially like midway through the last decade, we've always had really good receivers. If you think about Rashard Matthews, I guess throughout really the entire decade, if you think about it, we've had pretty solid receivers each year, except maybe for the 2012 team, it wasn't that great all around. But you think about Mike Wallace, Brandon Marshall, Devon Best, Brian Hartline, even Charles Clay as a receiving option. I don't know, for whatever reason, the Dolphins have done a good job of kind of accumulating this talent with receivers over the last decade. And good thing they did, because we'd be in a really bad spot right now. But they still have Devontae Parker. They still have Preston Williams. I'm excited, like I said, about Isaiah Ford's development. He showed a lot last year. And my point was with the whole offense last year, because I kind of felt like I didn't, make a point on that. But what I meant by that was, can he do some of the same things in this offense? And one of the things Gailey said in his press conference was, I tailor my offense to my players' strengths, whatever those strengths are. So I think if that is true, I think Isaiah Ford will get a good opportunity this year. Same thing with Gary Jennings. I'm excited to see what he does. He's a great athlete, and it's going to be interesting to see. One thing I do know before we move on, just to talk about the skill positions on this offense. This offense is going to be really fast. With Jakeem Grant, Matt Breida, Mike Gesicki, who's a 4-4 tight end, or is a 4-5 tight end, I can't remember. Somewhere right in there, who's a faster tight end, a very athletic tight end. And some of the receivers, and obviously with Breida he clocked in as the fastest player in the league. This offense is going to be really fast. And if this offensive line can just get it together, this team is going to be pretty good on offense. And we'll see how the offense gels with the players. And with the offseason being the way it was, with the new system to implement, we'll see how all that works. But I feel like I think we're going to be okay. And it all comes down to the offensive line, and if we can really just finally see some improvement in that area, because it's been too long, and God knows we've dealt with some bad ones over the years. So especially this last decade. So we, if as long as that comes together, I'm very excited to see where this offense goes. So, again, not the biggest loss, but it does suck because Albert Wilson he is a weapon. He can score from anywhere on the field when he's healthy, and it would have been nice. So, let's move on to this next news story. I've kind of felt like I maybe spent a little bit too much time on that. This next news story. So, with all the opt-outs with Allen Hurns and Albert Wilson opting out, it cleared up some cap space. So, the Dolphins now are 7th currently in 2020 in cap space with about $24 million that they can spend. So if you wanted to know about that, and that comes from Pro Football Rumors, there you go. So that's pretty good. It's going to be interesting to see. And that leads us really, which is a kind of a good segue. Well, no. Before I do that, I want to talk about this. The Dolphins have signed Ricardo Lewis, this comes from Pro Football Rumors, and Chester Rogers. And obviously this is for depth, because the Dolphins need depth at that position now. And really, to break this down, I don't really expect either one of these guys to do anything. Chester Rogers, I think, is the most interesting prospect here. Has had a very disappointing career. If you look at his stats from 2016 to 2019, he's only accumulated just over 1,000 yards. And really, he has 5 career touchdowns. Last year, he only had 179 yards. He played 12 games. So I don't really expect either one of these guys to do much. I think some of the guys that we talked about before with Ford and even Gary Jennings, who hasn't done much in the league either, I just expect them to... I think those guys are going to be your starting 3. I think one of those 2 would be. And obviously you can throw Jakeem Grant in there. And from all reports we've heard, they're planning on, and I think this was... it was a tweet or something, I can't remember. But the Dolphins are planning on using Jakeem Grant more on the outside. So, which is going to be interesting to see how that works out. And they run a lot of spread, so... And some of the things that Chan does with the screen game is going to be really fun to watch with Jakeem. So, I expect him to be kind of in and out of the lineup. I don't think he's going to be like... Oh, he's just going to be on the outside, or he's just going to be in the slot all the time. I think Jakeem Grant's going to move around a lot, but I don't expect Chester Rogers to be your slot receiver, is basically what I'm saying. If I had to guess right now who it's going to be, I would say Mike Gesicki is going to take a lot of those snaps and run a lot of those plays from the slot position. But I think if as a true receiver, I think you're going to get probably Isaiah Ford, I would say, out of the group that's left over. But we'll see. But again, I don't expect Chester Rogers or Ricardo Lewis to do that much on this team. Maybe I'm wrong. This next news story comes from the Finsider. Dolphins place Xavien Howard on reserve/COVID-19 list. So if you're not familiar with this, it's not complicated, but basically people are put on this list if you have tested positive for the disease, and they're not allowed to disclose that information if they have tested positive or haven't. And so the requirements you have to meet to be placed on this list, you either have to test positive for the virus or come into contact with someone that has the virus. And if you have been paying attention, players like Shaq Lawson and who else was put on the list? Someone else was put on the list that I can't remember. I'm drawing a blank, but there was a few prominent Dolphins players that were put on that list that got they got taken off of the list like a few days after they were put on the list. So this isn't as bad as it sounds. He could come back at any point, really, and we'll see how that works. So it's not that bad of news. He could be back anytime in the next week or the next 2 days. So it's not like he's going to be out for a significant time. He's still rehabbing his injury, though. I think he can still play week 1. It's still a little over a month away, I believe. So I don't think this is bad news at all. So if you're worried about that, I don't think you should be. So let's move on to the final news story of the day. This is the most interesting one, and I hope the Dolphins act on this. This comes from Bleacher Report. Logan Ryan views himself as a safety. Agent emailed GMs comparing quarterbacks' stats. Free agent Logan Ryan views himself as a safety rather than a cornerback he's generally listed as. To that end, his agent emailed all 32 GMs these top safety stats and asked them to compare it to his production. So I thought this was really interesting, and we've talked about this before on the show, but I think Logan Ryan, and especially since I should have backed these two stories together because it makes more sense. But the story we read earlier about how the Dolphins freed up some cap space with the opting out of Allen Hurns and Albert Wilson, and they have like $24 million, almost $25 million in cap space that makes them 7th in the league. They could absolutely sign Logan Ryan. There's a huge hole at free safety right now. They don't know who's going to play there. Bobby McCain historically has been pretty bad at that position. If it's not Bobby McCain, then it's 2 rookies. Either it's going to be Igbenogany or Brandon Jones from Texas. So there's a huge hole there, and that's really the only hole on the defensive side of the football. And when you look around at free agency, Logan Ryan, who isn't the same player he used to be as a corner, but he's been in the system. It's a shortened off season, so right away when he comes into the building, he's already going to know what to do because he played under, obviously, Brian Flores and Bill Belichick. He played in this defense for years. That's what got him his second contract with Tennessee. So there's not going to be a huge learning gap there. So he can pretty much come in right away and start, which is a huge positive. He's a veteran player. He hasn't played free safety before in the past. And I've talked about this before, that really the requirement for safety in this system, especially, is you kind of have to, you're basically a pseudo corner if you're not playing far off the ball. Like, you're basically a cornerback is what I'm trying to say. And some of the coverages that we call, especially if you play strong safety in this system, there's a lot of single high stuff. And the safeties are a lot of the time asked to guard a tight end or a running back or a slot receiver man-to-man. So you have to have good coverage skills. And you see that with some of the moves the Dolphins made with Igbenogany, who's been rumored to play safety. And obviously Brandon Jones at Texas did a lot of that stuff at Texas. So in the system, you kind of have to have coverages, especially in man-to-man, is a huge part of what our safeties do in the system. You have to be great in open field tackling. Some of the other stuff you have to do well. And if you look at Logan Ryan and you look at his stats last year, Logan Ryan finished with 113 total tackles, 4 interceptions, 4 forced fumbles, and 4.5 sacks. He started all 16 games last year, and he's only missed 3 games over his 7-year career. So if you look at the stats here, I'm going to read these again because they're actually kind of crazy. 113 total tackles, 4 interceptions, 4 forced fumbles, 4.5 sacks. He played all 16 games last year. Those are safety numbers. If you looked at this stat line and say, oh, that's one of the best safeties in the NFL right there, if they had that stat line. So when you look at Logan Ryan play right now, he fits all the criteria to play free safety. He fits the system to a T. He's been in this system in a shortened off season. I think that's super valuable. He's a veteran player, and he fills a huge question mark on your team. The Dolphins have already been connected to him. I think it's interesting that he has to come out and say, yeah, I will play free safety now. I think that's interesting. So maybe the reason he hasn't been signed, or isn't a Dolphin for that matter, is because he said in the past he doesn't want to play safety. Now that he does say, yeah, I'm willing to play safety, and you look at his stat line and you look at his game, he's a great open field tackler, fits the system to a T, like I just said, has great cover. Like, obviously he played corner his entire career, so he's got a great coverage background. So some of the things we ask our safeties to do, he can do very well. And he's big too, and you don't lose any of that safety mentality or ability in him at all, because the dude had 113 tackles by himself at the cornerback position, not to mention he had 4.5 sacks. He's a great tackler, and he can play in the box too, and he's not afraid to tackle a running back, clearly. So to me, this is a perfect fit. Literally could not be a more perfect fit. Now, if the Dolphins were smart, this would have already been done, in my opinion. I think this needs to get done. First of all, not only does the ripple effects of him being signed and playing free safety, let's just assume I would assume if the Dolphins do sign him, he would play free safety, but let's just say he's playing free safety when he signed to, and hopefully I would be over the moon if he was a Dolphin. That moves Bobby McCain out of the safety position. And one of the things, and I don't want to go on a whole other Bobby McCain rant at safety, but there's so many reasons why he shouldn't play safety. But so that moves Bobby McCain down to the position that got him paid to begin with, which is the slot cornerback position, which he is actually very good at. So I think it makes the defense significantly better for those two reasons. I think you fill a huge hole at free safety. Not only you're getting you're getting an above average NFL starter at that position. Not to mention the fact that he's teaming up with a bunch of really good players in the secondary to begin with. And he's been very successful in this defensive system already. So all of those things, and like I said, Bobby McCain moves down to slot corner. I think you have a great young mix of young, talented players with a lot of really good veterans on that defense at that point. And you really don't have any holes. If you look at the defense, and I'm assuming Eric Rowe is going to be the same player he was a year ago at safety, which he was amazing at that position, and it was awesome to watch. So let's just say Eric Rowe is going to continue that play. There's no hole in this defense. Maybe, and again, I've said this many times, I guess you could say, well, there's not a star pass rusher on this defense. My argument to that is this defense doesn't need that, and we've seen that in New England. It's the same system, and they've won Super Bowls and had really good defenses, and they've had the best third down defense without a great pass rusher for a lot of years because they have a strong secondary, and that's how they build their defenses. That's exactly what the Dolphins would have. I think this is a no-brainer move, and I think if they sign Logan Ryan tomorrow, or whenever, and let's just say they sign Logan Ryan, I think this defense, and you heard, Omar Kelly say something very similar, and the reason I bring up Omar is because I don't want to sound like I'm a crazy person half the time, but he said this defense, and this is where I had it, and I didn't expect him to say this, but he said this defense has the talent, and he's a very negative person, so this is, coming from him, and actually he's like, wow, even he thinks his defense can, be that good. He said anywhere from 15 to 12. And if you sign someone like Logan Ryan to this team, who's a very good player, Pro Bowler, again, knows the system, fits this position amazingly, you add someone like that to this defense, and the sky is the limit. I mean, this could be a top 10 defense easy. By the way, the communication, all of the things that he would bring to that defense, it's such an important position to play. And you almost need a vet, and you're going to deal with a lot of growing pains if you have a rookie safety back there. And I feel like it just would be, it's a match made in heaven. I mean, I really could not, you couldn't make up a better free agent signing for the Dolphins. He fits this, everything that you would need, and he fixes a huge not a huge hole, I would say, because I think it's not like they have, what's a good example? Like Bakari Rambo at free safety or someone like that. It's not that bad. And I think Stephen Parker, I was going to bring up Stephen Parker, but I thought he played pretty well for us last year. Coming off the street and making some plays, really. So yeah, I think this is a perfect fit. Please, Miami, please do it. I think it makes you one of the best defenses in the NFL. I think definitely, arguably the best secondary in the NFL. I think, Baltimore is pretty good, but I think when you look at our team, I don't think there's a better corner duo in the league right now, and I don't think there's a more athletic, more physical. I mean, our corners are going to wear your receivers down. They're big, physical, strong, athletic corners, and we play a ton of man press, and I think our defense will just eat people alive at that point if they get someone like Logan Ryan. Oh my God, he not to the same level, but because obviously Charles Woodson, I was gonna bring up Charles Woodson, and even like Rod Woodson, they made that transition to safety seamlessly, and I think his game fits the safety position to a T. And like I said, all you gotta do is, that stat line was like a corner from the 80s or the 70s. That's an insane stat line for a corner to have 113 tackles, 4.5 sacks, and 4 forced fumbles. That's insane. So I hope that the Dolphins jump on this. They have the cap space to do it now. The NFL just allowed, and not that this matters, because I don't think it matters when you're talking about Logan Ryan, but now you can bring free agents in for workouts and stuff, so I think this is just a match made in heaven. And I swear, hopefully he doesn't come back to any of the division teams, because that would that would hurt me a little bit more than if you went to Carolina or something like that. But I just really, really hope the Dolphins, really hoping that they sign him. All right, let's move on to the fan Q&A, ladies and gentlemen, where we answer fans' questions. And let me know what you guys think about the whole Logan Ryan situation. I think this is. This definitely would be one of the better signings. It's just, to me, it's a perfect match. I'll be interested to hear what you guys think about it in the comment section. And I'm excited for Channing. And one thing before I want to bring this up. I forgot. I made a mental note of this, and I want to bring this up before we get into the fan Q&A. I watched a lot of 2015 Jets, because I wanted to see, because that was the most successful that Ryan Fitzpatrick and Shane Gailey have been together. They led that team to a 10-6 record. He had over 30 touchdowns passing. That was the most successful they have been together. They had Eric Decker, they had Brandon Marshall. And watching that offense, one of the things that I really wanted to watch when they beat New England in MetLife. I really wanted to watch that game because obviously I feel like that's probably going to be our hardest team to play, especially defensively. And And, I think, what is he, in his 60s, mid to late 60s, I believe? I don't know how old Shane. He's an older dude. He's been coaching for a long time. It's amazing to me. One of the things that immediately that you will see, and especially consistently, and one of the things I was worried about is, like, is this kind of a dinosaur offense? And immediately, like, it kind of blows your mind. It's like, this dude is really that old. Like, the offense that he runs, and I love the way he calls games too. If you stay in a certain coverage, he will make you pay for that. He's a very smart coach. I don't think he's this guy who's like, all right, we want to run 15 times and set up play action. That's what we're going to do every single week. He's not that coach. He's very adaptive and very receptive to the things that are going on the other, on the opponent's defense. And I loved that about the offense. Like, he did adjust very well. His red zone offense and the way he plays in the red zone is very creative. A lot of fades, a lot of creative screens. And especially before he got to New York, the Jets, when he was in Buffalo, and he got people, and he uses the tight end so well. He really gets, and I think, Ryan Fitzpatrick said this too, but he really does find good matchups for the offense in every single game. He really, really does. He finds the weak point or maybe the weak link in a defense, and he really, really goes after it. For example, when they played New England in MetLife, which was a huge game, they ran a lot of rub routes, because obviously Bill Belichick likes to run man-to-man. That's the staple of his defense, press man-to-man. And he just did a lot of concepts to beat that, and they did. And I was really impressed by it. And they passed a ton in that game. And obviously they ended up winning it. But the play calling, if you just fast forward, it's a perfect example of this. They've been playing pretty much the same coverage the entire game, the Patriots have, which is what they do. And then obviously mix it up and stuff, but it's mainly man-to-man. And they run man-to-man again in overtime. And one of the first plays from the Jets for the Jets, and obviously if they score a touchdown, they win. They run this awesome, like, pick route to the flat, and spring open Quincy Enunwa, and he's up the sideline for the game, basically the game winner. So that's kind of what I'm saying is like, you can't play the same defense against this guy, or he's going to make you pay for it. And I think that plays a great example of that. So again, just my takeaways from that is he really opens up the middle of the field. When he had a tight end, and he didn't have it in the 2015 offense, but when he does have a tight end, he does a lot of creative things to get the tight end involved. His red zone offense is really fun to watch. A lot of creative, like, fades and screen, and just really cool, stuff. And it's really adaptive. And you wouldn't know that this offense was from a guy as old as him. And like I said, it's not a dinosaur offense at all. It's not like Jeff Fisher trying to do some of the things that he was doing in the early 2000s. That's, you kind of worry about that a little bit. It's like, all right, is this going to be a little bit outdated? And it wasn't. It was very creative and very innovative, and very adaptive. And I really enjoyed. I didn't enjoy watching the Jets score touchdowns, but I really enjoyed watching that, and it gets me excited to see what he does with some of the talent that we have here. So I wanted to bring that up. Hopefully some of that made sense. But it gets me excited. I really like Chan Gailey's offense. Alright, let's get to the fan Q&A where we answer fans' questions. This first question comes from SM. He says, Stephen Ross is 80 this year. Will he see a Dolphins championship as the owner in his lifetime? I don't know, but I really do hope he sees success. And, I hope he sees the franchise go back to what it used to be and just very successful. And hopefully he at least gets to see that. That sounds very morbid and dark, but what are you going to do? This question comes from SM. He says, if Mike Gesicki... Again, this question comes from SM. He says, if Mike Gesicki is killing it at the trade deadline, what is your price to send him to a team on a deep playoff / why would I ever do that? He's a young tight end. This would be the third year on. No, like, there's no way I would give up someone like that. It's very... I'm not giving up a tight end with his gifts, and especially if he's killing it. I'm not trading him for anything. And I have a ton of cap space next year, so it's going to be easy to re-sign him. This next question comes from SM. He says, who has the best chance out of the 17 draft of turning their career around? Mitch Trubisky, Reuben Foster, Taco Charlton, or Charles Harris? Career around? This is a very bad group. I would say probably Mitch Trubisky, to answer your question. This next question comes from Adrian. He says, let me get close here. Skaggs, how are you holding up? I'm holding up just fine. Thank you for asking. He says, the more I analyze the current line situation under the circumstances right now, the more I am concerned. Newly acquired players, rookies, limited practice time, new coach. If I'm Greer/Flo, I'm scouting the market for another OT. What do you say? Where he says, what say you? So the question is, the more I analyze the current line situation under the circumstances right now, the more I'm concerned. Okay, so what I would say, I guess, well, first of all, most teams are dealing with this. And I think the majority of the new additions to the offensive line up front, especially when you talk about the interior of the offensive line, they're veterans. I mean, Eric Flowers, Ted Karras, those guys, have experience in this league. So I'm not too concerned about those two. But you talk about players like Robert Hunt, Solomon Kindley, Austin Jackson. Those players, it is a little bit concerning. It is a little bit concerning. You kind of wish you maybe had a little bit. You kind of wish, maybe you wish you had a Brandon Albert. You wish you had a Russell Okung. You wish you had a Jason Peters. You wish you had a Whitworth or someone like a veteran, solid guy in that group, and it just didn't happen. And I think that's one of the things that this team is missing. And one of the more glaring holes, I think I see where you're coming from, but I'm interested to see where it goes. Because like I said, the interior and especially I would say the right tackle position, I'm not worried about it. It's really just kind of the left tackle position, and I am interested to see how this works as a whole. But it is a talented group. I think some of the things that we've heard from coaches and players so far into this training camp / offseason, whatever you want to call it, how they were impressed with the size of the group and the talent of the group. And Ryan Fitzpatrick says you notice right away a difference from last year to this year. And I think that gives us fans a lot of confidence that they're confident in that. And I think with all that being said, I'm not concerned about it. I just want to see it. I want to see it. But it's the most concerning part of the team. You're right about that. But so the question is, scout the market for. There's not really much you can do, and I don't think any team is going to be willing to trade a veteran or even a solid backup tackle at this point in the year. With obviously in the middle of this this camp and with how weird the offseason is and stuff like that. So I don't think that's going to happen, and I don't think you would get anything in terms of quality either. But I am optimistic about the group. Let's just say that. This next question comes from Richard. He says, Chester Rogers was a good signing for the Dolphins receiving corps. He played in the slot like Albert Wilson and returned punts. Yeah, but here's the thing about Chester Rogers. Doesn't have a lot of production. I guess he adds good depth. He might be a good special teams player, but I don't expect him to do much on this team. Let's just put it that way. To answer your question, Richard. This next question comes from SM. He says, why go on the cheap at wide receiver? We have the money. Who would you bring in late in the game? There's not a whole lot to bring in. There's obviously Antonio Brown is a big name, clearly, but which would be amazing. And I know people are like, the locker room and all this other stuff. I don't think he's gonna like if he went to the Dolphins. I honest to God, I don't think it would be that big of a deal. I don't think it would be that big of a deal going to any team. I mean, he's Antonio Brown. The guy's going to give you almost 2,000 yards receiving every year and close to double-digit touchdowns and over 100 catches easily. So I don't care if he goes back to the huddle and is like, hey, man, maybe hit me on the slant next time. I really don't. I don't think that would be a problem for that team, especially with some of the veteran leadership on that team. I don't think. And with Brian Flores, I don't think it would be. And I know people think he's a head case, which he is. I'm not saying he's a pretty crazy guy. But that could be interesting. That would be a lot of fun to watch. So I guess if a comet raced by the sky right now and I made a wish, I would say, can the Dolphins have Logan Ryan? And I would like to see Antonio Brown, one of the best receivers of our generation, play in a Dolphins uniform. I think that would be fun. And like I said, I know people would be like, oh, well, the locker room stuff. And he was fine in New England until he messed up off the field. It was the in the locker room stuff that got him in trouble. So I think with the good leadership, I think it would be fine. And I think the team would love him. As long as he, is going to practice and putting up touchdowns. I think the entire fan base and team would love that. Let's see here. This next question comes from Cash is King. He says, do you expect the Dolphins O-line to make the next step on the field this year? As far as being a top... I don't think it's going to be a top 10, top 15 O-line. I think it's a little too much pressure to put on them. But if it can be anywhere between, 15 and 18, that's fine. And I know I just said, it's going to be hard for them. I don't know if it's going to be from 15 to 10. I don't think it can be in that range. Because it's like, all right, it's a young group. It's a weird off-season. We'll see how things go, but I don't know if it can be that high just yet. But I do expect it to be significantly better. We're talking about the worst offensive line in the league last year. Maybe you can make an argument that the Bengals were worse, but at least they could run the ball a little bit. This next question comes from Josh. He says, how do you think Kyle Van Noy can be... excuse me, let me go back here. He says, this question comes from Josh. He says, how good do you think Van Noy can be for us in this defense, knowing he has been coached by Flores in the past and he's had success with him? And then he says, go Fins. Go Fins. Fins up. So how do I think Kyle Van Noy, how good? I think he can be very good. I think easy, but first of all, he actually gives us an edge presence. I think on a run defense is going to be insanely good this year. The best it's been in over 8 years. I think that's safe to say. I think between how good our young linebackers are, our front is sneaky good on the defensive line with some of the assets that we've accumulated over the last few years on that front. We think about Godshaw and even Christian Wilkins, and we got what's his name? I forget his name. I think Raekwon Davis from Alabama. We've done a really good job of building that front up. We got a lot of really good edge guys, and I think Kyle Van Noy is really going to open up a lot of things for some of these other guys. So I think he can. The sky is the limit for Kyle Van Noy. He's a great player. He's great in coverage. He's great against the run. He brings you a good blitz element. He's really good on stunts. You can rush him off the edge. I think he's a very versatile, great linebacker, and he's still in his prime, and he's still in a system that he thrived in. So I'm very excited. It won't end up like Carlos Dansby and Kevin Burnett did, like those big, and Philip Wheeler, Darnell Ellerbe. It's not going to end up like that. These guys actually fit the system and are talented younger players. This next question comes from SM. He says, will Antonio play this year, and for whom? I have no idea, but if it's not us, I would love to see him in Seattle. I think that would be just fun to watch. Especially with that division and how crowded it is. This next question comes from SM. He says, kick the tires on Dez Bryant or Josh Gordon, ? I would kick the tires on Dez Bryant. He's played a lot of slot in his career. He's a veteran receiver. I think that could be cool. This next question comes from Tech Me Out. He says, what are your thoughts on the spread offense, and do you think that Gailey would run the offense similar to the way he's run offenses in the past, or will he see something different? I think you're gonna get more. I think you're going to get more of the offense when he was in Buffalo, but better than that, because I think we're more talented than that. But, when he had C.J. Spiller and Fred Jackson and Scott Chandler, and that group were the 3 best players, and Stevie Johnson, those were the 4 best players on his team. I think it's going to be more like that, but a little bit better than that, and because I think we have more talent, especially at the receiver position. I think Mike Gesicki's more talented than Chandler was. And I think Matt Breida and Jordan Howard are very similar to Fred Jackson and C.J. Spiller. Very similar play styles. I think he's going to utilize them like he did in Buffalo. So I think you can expect more of that. which he utilized them very well, by the way. This next question comes from MC. He says, and I mean, if you remember us playing them all the time, like, CJ Spiller was a problem every time we played him. This next question comes from MC. He says, would it be better if Tua didn't play this year to heal better and just learn? And that came from TR3MC. I don't know if I said that. Would it be better? I don't know if it would be... would it be better if Tua didn't play? No, I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with that. You see a lot of quarterbacks, veteran... I'm talking about Hall of Famers say that I think the first year is very important for your career, playing. And I think that's very interesting. I think it... And again, I don't think you throw your rookie quarterback behind a really bad offensive line. I think it's a very bad idea. So if the offensive line isn't good, there's no way I would play Tua this year. But if it's good, then I would throw him out there if he's better than Fitzpatrick. This next question comes from Josh. He says, do you think Preston Williams will pick up where he left off from last year? He played pretty well. Yeah, I think absolutely he will. I'm very excited to see how Chan uses him. And like I said earlier in the video, like he uses the fade route, especially in the red zone, creatively. And he used it a lot because Fitzpatrick is really good at throwing that fade route from like 20 yards out. And they did that a lot because they had Eric Decker and Brandon Marshall, both of those guys, physical, taller guys. And what do we have here in Miami? We have Devontae Parker and Preston Williams, physical, taller guys. I think you're going to see a lot of that. You're going to see a lot, especially when you're in the red zone, especially with people like, I cannot wait to see Mike Gesicki, Devontae Parker, and Preston Williams on the same field in a Chan Gailey offense where he's really good, like I said, attacking the middle, and he's good attacking the sidelines of the field with those fade routes. It's going to be and not to mention if you put Matt Breida in the backfield, like the way he used CJ Spiller coming out of the backfield, like that's going to be a problem for defenses to handle. Because who's the number one target in the red zone? Is it CJ? Well, I shouldn't say CJ. I don't know why I say CJ Spiller. Is it Mike Gesicki, who's a 6'5" tight end who's great in the red zone? Is it Devontae Parker? Is it Preston Williams? Is it, obviously, Matt Breida coming out of the backfield? Who is either one of those? Any one of those guys could be a number one target on this play to score us a touchdown, and that's a problem for defenses. You're gonna get a favorable matchup with one of those guys, and I think Chan Gailey is really good at doing that. Like I said in the earlier in the video, he's really good at finding the weak links. So I think our red zone offense is gonna be way better than it was a year ago, like way better, and that gets me so excited to see that. And so to answer your question, I think Preston Williams is going to have a career year for sure in this offense, for sure. This next question comes from SM. He says, Lamar Miller is a Patriot. Yeah, I saw that. It's kind of crazy that Miller is a Patriot, which is weird. I think that signing is more interesting than people, like, because they have James White, they have Sonny Michel, and I guess they do run through running backs a lot, so I guess it's not weird. But, I don't know. It's like, what does this mean for Sonny Michel? It's like, maybe they're considering the fact that he kind of, not a bust, but it didn't really work out the way that they wanted it to. I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. But he has a lot of experience in an offense coming from Bill O'Brien in Houston. So it's interesting to see how that works out. But they still don't have anyone to throw to. So that's gonna be it, guys. Interesting podcast. I think we discussed a lot of interesting stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I am Skaggs83. Let me know what you guys think about Logan Ryan, because I think that, and even Antonio Brown. Would you be? I think you all would be excited if Antonio Brown was a Dolphin, and I honestly do believe that. I mean, he is a crazy person, probably not the best human being in the world, not even depending how you look at it. I mean, he did some crazy things. Especially what he did to Oakland was wrong. He shouldn't have done that. I mean, not showing up for work because of pettiness is insane. But anyway, the point is, it would be interesting, that's for sure. I don't think we would have those issues in Miami, for sure. So that is going to be it, guys. I am Skaggs1383, and I will see you guys in the next one.